And in this country, if we want to lead on this issue, why aren't we leading in discovering new ways to wrap our products that don't involve petrochemicals and that are biodegradable? Why aren't we changing the habits in our cities and our towns of plastic bag use and all of this? This is a crisis of global proportions, and we're acting as if the little teeny bit that we're doing is somehow going to stop our grandchildren from experiencing a world where there is more plastic, I hope to be alive in 2050, more plastic in our oceans than all of the fish and marine wildlife.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the chairman and the ranking member, as well as the senator from New Jersey, for their leadership on this issue. This is a bipartisan issue. It's important to me for obvious reasons. Ms. Wallace, I wanted to ask you about the garbage patch in the Pacific. Let's just do it this way to start. Describe it for us.
Yes, the garbage patch has gotten this amazing sort of reputation that maybe it doesn't deserve. I think people think about an island of solid trash out in the middle of the ocean, twice the size of Texas. That's what we hear, right? But what it actually is, it's the North Pacific Gyre. It's a convergent zone where things that don't have propulsion on their own will end up. So it's a collection area. But it's not a solid land mass. It's bundles of fishing gear. It's tiny pieces of microplastic that can be spread miles apart and throughout the water column or on the benthic surface. So you can actually sail through the garbage patch without necessarily knowing you're in it.
It's just covered in trash.
Well, it is, but it's not, you may not see all the trash, right? So it's not this big solid land mass. It's actually kind of all spread apart. We've used the analogy of a peppery soup, if you think about it. So these little pieces that are flowing throughout.
Okay, thank you. And then when it comes to marine debris, marine trash, what is the composition of marine trash on the planet, if we know this, between sort of maritime uses, between dumping, between sort of landfill practices that are not best practices? In other words, where is this all coming from?
It's a great question, and it is something that we don't necessarily have the exact answer, but I can certainly tell you there is a mix of land-based and sea-based sources. For instance, in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, we know that we accumulate 50 tons of derelict fishing gear a year in this pristine environment. But if you look at the Ocean Conservancy's International Coastal Cleanup data, the past 30 years of picking up trash on the beach, the number one item is almost always cigarette butts, followed by plastic bottles, plastic bags, consumer debris. So we know that a huge amount is these land-based sources of debris. And NOAA has a monitoring program to try to get at that more.
So we don't know.
Well, I think there's a number that we hear a lot, sort of 80% land and 20% sea, but I think it really depends on where specifically you're looking. To get a real global estimate, it's hard, but we know it's all bad.
And sure, but from the land-based trash, are these landfills that are along the coastline and trash that ends up in the ocean, or is this the dumping of land-based trash into the ocean?
In the United States, I would say a lot of it's coming from sort of mismanaged waste, things that flow off garbage trucks, maybe don't get put into garbage cans, littering. But it can come all the way down through the rivers. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your beach debris. And here in Washington, D.C., we know things are coming straight down the Anacostia River into the Potomac and out into the Chesapeake Bay. So it doesn't necessarily come just from our people that are right on the shores. It's coming from all over.
So the reason I'm asking this is not just to satisfy my curiosity, but obviously we want to know where it comes from so we can figure out how to go upstream and stop it.
Right.
And, you know, Senator Booker talked eloquently about the need for behavior to change and the need for some of our societal norms to change. And the good thing is that we're innovative enough to still have a convenient life and reduce the amount of waste we put into landfills and then accidentally put into the ocean. But the question that I have, and I'm troubled because I have some pretty good experts on my own staff and they have access to other experts, that we don't really know from whence all this comes. And how to go upstream and determine, especially in the international context, what do we do about the poor management of landfills, for instance, in Southeast Asia? You know, we just don't know what percentage of the problem this comprises.
Right. So I think, you know, in the United States, one of the things we're doing is we have robust monitoring programs. So I mean, it's a small thing, but we can start to see what the biggest items are in specific areas. Our partners in Virginia find tons and tons of balloons on their beaches. And if we didn't have that monitoring data, we wouldn't know. But knowing that they're balloons, maybe we can do a really big push on education saying, hey, don't release your balloons into the air. In Washington, we found a lot of aquaculture debris. So we can go to the aquaculture industry and say, this is a problem, we have the data. In developing countries, I think it's a very different story. I think we need to really think about the financing and the value around waste and how we incentivize that value and that collection. So there are different solutions depending on the different places that you are.